taking a chance. Telling me to dance, taking a chance. Telling me to dance, taking a chance.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of My Way, conversations with entrepreneurs doing business outside the box. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and super excited to be here with you for another episode this evening. It's been a long day. This is the first Tuesday back doing two shows because Project Joy came back yesterday, and of course, that's every weekday. So it's been a fun time. It's been a fun day. I'll be ready to pass out after this, and it'll be a good time. Listen, this is the show for you tonight. If you have issues with self-sabotage, limiting beliefs, if you're feeling not so empowered, this is definitely going to be the show for you this evening. Our guest tonight, we are not surprised because this seems to be a theme with our My Way guests. Very multi-passionate, really interesting background. She has a bachelor's in biology and chemistry, master's in metaphysics, experience as a financial advisor. She's been on radio shows. She's been on TV, a speaker. She does all kinds of things. And I love that she's just here to help the world. And she's super, super, super special. So here to bring us some glitter into our lives, bring us some magic into our lives, please welcome with me, Nicole Majik. Welcome, Nicole.
I love the sparkles.
See, I said it was fitting. It was just
so fitting. Super awesome.
I love it. How are you this evening, my friend?
Doing very well. Glad to be here. I've been looking forward to this. I love your show.
I know. Thank you so much. And I'm always super excited to have new friends on the show. And I said this when we met, your name is so fitting for what you do. Sometimes sometimes people's names fit, but it's just perfect. And so I just truly believe that what you are doing in the world is magical, and you're doing it your way, which is what the show is all about. So I'm excited to get into this conversation, but let everybody know where you're joining from, Nicole, and how a little bit about, I said a little of your background, but give us a little from your perspective.
So I am tuning in from Lincoln, Rhode Island, and a little bit about my background. Real quick recap is I used to be a chemist, almost died from mercury poisoning, switched gears, went and became a financial advisor, but all the while I had my business as the Empowerment Alchemist with Magic LLC. and raising 4 kids.
Hmm. I love it. I love it. We had the mom thing in common too, of doing that and creating our business. Do you feel like being a mom helped you as far as doing, like, being an entrepreneur, or do you think that it just added more stress? Like, how did that come together for you?
That's a great question, because I think at some times it was one way and sometimes it was another, right? Because different things happen, things shift, and it's not about finding a balance, but it's about finding harmony, because
Right.
priorities shift continuously in order to fit everything in and do everything that needs to be done, right?
Right, right. And I love that, finding harmony as opposed to balance. Anytime I would work with moms in the past, we would talk about this idea of balance. And what I meant by balance was whatever it looks like for you in the moment. But that
Yes.
word seems to be so triggering to moms because they're like, I can't even connect with that word.
Right, because the vibration of that word is something that is like keeping a balance. Like everything has to be
Right.
scaled properly, and nothing in life is scaled like that at any given moment. Sometimes, soccer mom has to get kids to practice and do things, and things shift and timelines shift. So whatever it takes to fit everything in with less stress and bringing harmony in. So it's, sometimes it's calling upon the unit, the family unit, or
Yeah.
whatever unit that you're involved in. Whether if it's a soccer mom's unit, right?
Yeah.
Just getting into that space of calling on the people that are needed, and working together to
Yeah.
empower each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I am interested to know, and what got you into biology and chemistry to begin with? Like, what appeals to you about that specific line of work?
Biology and chemistry were my loves. I was always into chemistry, and just um, one thing changing from one form to another. And when I was a kid, I used to love those chemistry sets and just
Mm,
doing whatever I could and finding out about science. I loved science, and I also loved the spiritual side of things too, which led me into the whole quantum physics. And on top of that, being that person that likes to make an impact and help people, when you go into science as a chemist, you can help people in very profound ways, and, still be behind the scenes, I guess, in a certain sort of way.
yeah. Yeah. How did those worlds mesh up for you, Nicole? Because I know you had experiences from a young age with the more woo woo side of things, as people say. And I'm curious how they meshed up for you, because, like, the science and then what your experience was, because they don't always match up. And we had a person that worked in science in the space industry, and he came on and was talking about, his spirituality and how it doesn't always align, his faith and in God and everything else doesn't always align with that science that's there. So what did that look like for you?
For me, as a young child growing up, I also was growing up in a very religious household. So
Mm,
it was, the things that I could see, I didn't know any different. That I could, the auras that I could see, the energy I could see around people, hearing spirits, seeing spirits, hearing their messages, that kind of thing. It was a little bit difficult, because it was a little bit more feared in the house. So it was wrong and, not of God. And so that was a little bit difficult growing up, and having to constantly like be quiet about things
mm,
instead of being inquisitive like a scientist is.
right.
And when I was outside in nature, I could explore and I could be and do whatever I wanted and just be me, or be anything that I conjured up. So there was that. And then just fast forwarding into the space when I went into science, um, it was the opposite. when the spiritual side came out, it was happening all over again because that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And I'm saying to myself, have you ever heard of quantum physics?
Yeah. Yeah. Which is
Yeah.
even, a whole other realm of science that is being explored now. And it's one of those things though, where even people who are in the science world, like, it's almost like they're speaking of limiting beliefs, it's almost like they're limiting themselves. And I don't understand it, but I had a similar experience, as far as limiting goes, being involved with the church, because the church will tell you God makes everything, but then they tell you, but no, what half of what God makes is bad. Like, I'm confused. Please help me out here, Nicole.
Well, I mean, I guess if you look at it as, I don't know. I tend to talk in terms of like how the Kabbalion is written, because if you think of God as the all, right, the all-inclusive, then there's anything that exists because the all has thought it up. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
I think okay. So when something exists, it is because the all, or God, has created it. Therefore, there's a balance. So positive and negative. And it's not that positive is positive and negative is always negative. There's a positive pole and a negative pole, and it just depends on, where you're looking at, where you're standing at and looking at it. Is it a positive as in a happy thing, or a negative sad thing? It's all relative. So if you're looking at something from one space and somebody else is looking at something from the opposite, part of that Kybalion teaches is the opposites are exactly the same. It's just a different degree, just like hot and cold. So is hot good or bad, and cold is good or bad? It's neither. Either one can be bad for a person if you burn yourself on the hot, or frostbite on the cold. Either way, you're still getting burnt.
Right. Absolutely. I want to say hi really quickly. Brittany's joining us this evening. Good to see you, Miss Brittany. And also the Jacksons are here. Good evening, Divine DNA. Good to see you guys. And please chime in. Let us know if you have any questions as we're talking. If you have anything you want Nicole to chime in on as we are having this conversation. I love that the conversation of perspective, and I can't tell you how many times on one show or another I'll take a bottle and I'll say, look, your view of this and my view, or it's the same thing, but we're just seeing it differently. And how many times we've talked about that. But that concept in itself, I mean, gosh, it holds us back so many times just in our own personal development, because we forget that everybody sees different sides of things.
Yeah, and I want to make a big statement here and not go into it. Politics. So if we actually approach it from that, curiosity angle of how are you looking at something versus you're looking at it differently than I am, you are bad.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's so many things that we could, some of y'all need to hear that and rewind and listen to that again.
Listen to that again.
Listen again. So you were in, doing biology and chemistry. At what point did you decide to kind of get away from that?
When I had mercury poisoning, I was unable to work for 2 times at 6 months at a clip. So, and then I went through a whole bunch of testing. They didn't know what was wrong with me, kind of thing. And so I went through about a year to a year and a half of testing before finding out that I had mercury poisoning. I figured out I had mercury poisoning. When I went to the doctor or called him up, he actually laughed at me and was like, nobody gets mercury poisoning, Nicole. And I was like, well, I went through all these tests. Can we just test it? Simple blood test. And then it was, oh my God, you need to see a specialist immediately. That specialist then told me, can't believe that you're sitting here having a conversation with me right now. And the way that I was talking, it was more like a stroke victim. So I couldn't get words out. I couldn't really understand what people were saying to me. It took a little while for things to sink in and get deciphered. But at first, when people would talk to me, I would hear like the Peanuts character. Wah, 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 wah. That's what I would hear. And then I couldn't get the words out. And I said to him, "You call this a conversation?" And he said, "Let me put it into perspective. Most people with levels as high as yours are either vegetables or dead." And I was like, okay, then that's not an option. What do we do next? So I was actually lumped into a layoff after I had asked my my work to test for mercury in my office.
Wow.
So that's when I left chemistry.
That's incredible. I mean, it's incredible in a I mean, I'm so thankful that you were able to catch it and that you advocated for yourself, because I can't tell you, I know when you and I talked initially, we were talking a little bit about my history with some of my health things. And it is so frustrating to know that something is not right and to continue to push and get laughed at.
Yeah. By your own doctor, even.
Right.
You know, it was kind of like, that's not happening. No way is that happening. And I get where he was coming from, but it was just one of those things where, okay, well, I don't care if it's funny or not. This isn't funny. I was going to die.
Right.
Definitely. I was going to die.
Yeah. So obviously you had to have that stuff taken care of. I'm going to assume even once, you know, it probably took a long time to get back to Nicole again.
Yeah, it took about somewhere between 1.5 to 2 years. So I usually say about 1.5 years. That's when I actually started feeling okay again. Somewhat okay, but I lost a lot of memory and just things were not exactly right. My adrenals had been shot, so there were a lot of health issues that happened afterwards, and I still have to do a lot of detoxing and, you know, making sure that my body is, you know, has its own harmony versus balance, and I keep going. Yeah.
I love that. Did you know right away what you were going to do, or like when you started feeling a little bit better, or did you take some time to kind of explore what does life look like for me now?
I took the time, and then it was kind of like, okay, I have to go back to work. So I had opened up a shop, and it was more like it wasn't going to sustain that level of what I was doing in my regular job. So I ended up going back, and I went into started in insurance and moved into as a financial advisor and started doing stuff like that, which actually enhanced what I was doing in my empowerment business. And because I found that I was kind of coaching and counseling my my clients in a way in which empowered them with their money instead of, you know, catering to their fears or inciting their fears.
Right. Yeah. The money conversation is an interesting one because I think everybody has their different reasons for being disconnected with money or having issues with money, or and so is there anything that you kind of noticed working in the financial world that's kind of tried and true across the board of like a main issue with people, or is it really an individual thing?
I think that, well, I know that there are 3 main things that everyone needs to feel fulfilled in their life. And the first thing is that they want to feel safe and secure. And if you don't feel safe and secure, you're in survival mode. You can't be in growth mode if you're in survival mode. But when you do feel safe and secure, you're basically confident, you're courageous, you're ready to take on the world. The second thing is everybody wants to be accepted. So we want to belong, we want to be respected, we want to be loved, and all of those things. And when you don't feel connected to other people, you start to question, how do I act around others? You get confused about how to behave. You distrust other people. You then tend to isolate yourself as well. But when you do feel loved and connected, you're able to be vulnerable. You're able to be fearlessly authentic. And you can be yourself because you are not afraid of being judged. That is huge. The third thing is that everybody wants to feel empowered. If you don't feel empowered, you say, well, if I can't gain it, then I will try to control it. And what happens then is you doubt yourself, you feel small and insignificant, and all these negative feelings that make you want to control even more. And the more you try to control, the less in control you actually are. However, when you do feel empowered, you start making decisions that are not only good for you, but they're good for everybody around you. And basically you end up empowering others along the way. And that works awesome because it brings together whatever unit you're working within, so whether it's family or work or some kind of organization that you belong to. That's really everybody's just to come together and work together and elevate each other, as I like to say.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I know we've had a couple other money folks on the show, and everyone, including you, is talking about mindset. But still, so many people have difficulty going, look, I'm not going to change my mindset, and then my bank is going to increase. Like, that's not how that works. There's so many people that still don't believe. How do we get that wall to come down, Nicole?
Well, one of the things is, and I'll kind of use one of the beliefs that I had. So I grew up in a household where you had to work really hard for your money. You had to, if you want it done right, do it yourself. And all of this mindset, and it was kind of delivered because that was the belief and that's what is passed down. So epigenetically, we're taking on these beliefs of our parents and their parents and their parents, and it just goes down the line. So if you look at the beliefs that were in my house around that, that's just like a little list, a couple examples. But what I ended up having was I had this belief that it was really hard for me to make money because I was unworthy to receive money. So this is it. I'm unworthy to receive money unless I work really hard to obtain it by my own efforts. So if somebody tried to give me money, that didn't fall in that belief. I found that I was refusing it, rejecting it. If it's not familiar, you will reject it. So what that wasn't familiar to me, that wasn't my belief. So I would reject anything that was tried to be given to me because I didn't work hard by my own effort to obtain it. So I changed my belief to money comes in swiftly, easily, and abundantly while doing what I love. And it is. Yeah. So you do, if you change the belief, you're changing that whole alignment to whatever it is that you're putting out there and whatever it is that you receive. So it's not that you have to change everything that you ever thought about, right? However, if there is something that is holding you back from attaining something easier, why wouldn't you explore it a little bit further? We all have money personalities, and those personalities are based off of different beliefs. So those beliefs cause a thought and a feeling, which then is a mediating trigger to a certain behavior that you elicit. Yeah. So your belief causes the thought and the emotion, creating the behavior, and your behavior generates that reality.
Yeah. And so Shiraz, that has done some energy work on the network, he has talked about how, we want to be right. As humans, we're so egotistical. We always want to be right. And so we will continue to create the reality to make our beliefs true if we don't get out of it. And so to me, that's enough to want to like push myself out of it. But I know that it's a challenging thing for some people, especially people who are not necessarily open to like the mindset, more woo-woo spiritual stuff. They're like, you can't tell me to do an affirmation and I'm gonna have $100,000 in my bank account.
Ooh,
Like
affirmations. Okay, so let me just say one thing about affirmations, because affirmations are great and all. However, affirmations, I have so many people that say, my affirmations don't work. And I'm like, well, it's not your affirmations that suck. It's because your beliefs suck.
right.
So your affirmations are there to support your beliefs. So if your affirmation is not supporting your actual belief, it's not going to work because you don't believe it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Faith
Absolutely.
without works is dead. Yes.
We're always, yes, I saw that from Brittany too. We're always talking about that on the show, especially Project Joy of, you if you say, if you're like in the middle, you have COVID and you can't breathe and you're saying to yourself, I am healthy, it's probably gonna work out for, because you don't believe that. You're sitting here coughing and going crazy. You don't believe that. And so you have to make them to where it's aligned with what you believe, and however that looks for you, or it's not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, and that one, right, what you just said, could easily be changed to I am capable of healing quickly.
Yes.
And then, I am healing quickly.
Yeah.
And just allowing that to take place. My body is amazing and is a powerhouse that can heal itself so quickly.
Yeah. And that's beautiful. I mean, that's more pretty words and it feels better. And so why not, try to just change things up a little bit. It's interesting because with the money beliefs, sometimes they can be there and you don't even know that they're there. Like not even aware. And the biggest one for me was believing that I needed to just spend the money, because if I didn't, it was just going to be taken away from me anyway. I was going to get sick and die and it's going to go. So it doesn't matter.
That's a big one.
And that came from an actual like instance of what happened when my grandfather worked for 53 years for the same company, made a lot of money, did really well for himself. And then 6 months after his retirement, he had a stroke, collapsed, and was bedridden for 14 years after that. And all of the money, by the time he died, went to his care. He never got to go on vacation with it, and so this is what I witnessed. And I never realized that that was a thing that was holding me back until I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah. Right? It's funny, the things that we witness and then the meanings that we assign to them.
Yeah. How do we not, Nicole, have that oh shit moment like I had and beat ourselves up for it, of going, because for me, like I've worked so hard on trying to improve myself and personal development and all of that stuff. And so I look at that and I go, you should have known better, Jessica. Like, really? And so how do we, I know that that's the challenge that a lot of our viewers have. How do we look at these situations and go, you didn't know better, you did what you could do in the moment, but how do we get past that?
Okay, so there's a lot of stuff in there. So if I can see how I can unpack that. So first of all, what sticks out is I worked so hard, right? I worked so hard. There's a preface right there. Yeah. And I try to say, or get my clients to say, and I've shifted the way that I say it, because I used to be like that. Work so hard. And it might slip out of my mouth. And usually when it comes out, I change it. So it's okay if it comes out, because we're human. And it's just an awareness, right? So if we catch it, we can change. I worked so hard I put a lot of energy into, right? That's okay if you put a lot of energy into something and you get something good out of it. Yeah. So if you're putting a lot of energy into something and you didn't get what you expected out of it, right? So then, therefore, now I'm going to beat myself up. If you put a lot of energy into it, or I work so hard, you shouldn't have done that, or you should be over here and you shouldn't be over there and you should be here instead. It's okay. I always look at what's the lesson and what's the opportunity, because there's always both. If you answer both of those questions, you know exactly where you need to be. You know exactly the path forward. You know exactly the next step to take.
I love
So if you look at it as it's not a beat yourself up moment, this is an awesome awakening moment of what is the lesson? Okay, I had put a lot of effort into this thing, and why didn't it work the way that I thought it was going to work? Well, maybe I procrastinated, maybe I did this, maybe I put a lot of energy into this, but it really wasn't productive. It was just busy work, right? You get what you put in. And if you're putting in a wheel spinning and going nowhere, well, that's what you're going to get. So by not beating ourselves up is remind ourselves to give us grace, step back, and what does it actually mean? Where is it coming from? Because you can change it. You have the power and the ability to look in and see what is the next step. What can I do right now that will get me where I want to be instead of where I am right now?
Right. What can I do right now? I love that question. I love that question. And sometimes it's interesting because we were talking about on Project Joy this morning, we were talking about reframing to joy. So when something is challenging, reframing how we're thinking about the situation. And we have every right as a human, as an individual to go, I just want to sit and wallow in it. And we can choose to do that. But then we have to ask ourselves, is this going to get us where we want to get? And if it's not, then we have to choose to move out of it. And it sounds very similar to what you're talking about as well, of just,
you bring up a good point there, because it's about feelings, right? You should allow yourself to feel whatever feelings that you're having. If you're having negative feelings, that is not a bad thing. Recognize it and process through it. Technically, we're only supposed to feel feelings, and we're be able to feel the feeling, process through it, and release it in 90 seconds or less. So if it's taking you longer than 90 seconds to do that, then there's something underlying there.
Yeah. Absolutely. I want to ask you something, because I know I mentioned that you've done a lot of things, very multi-passionate, and you talked about sort of choosing something to do and moving forward in that. I tend to be a very, I consider myself to be a very creative person. I have a new idea every second. Like, I am not short on ideas at all. And so many people that come on this show are very similar to that. Many people in my sphere were just pumping out ideas like breaths that we take. It's very good. Some of us, we end up stagnant because we have so many ideas, and then we can't decide, like, what do we do moving forward? Has that ever been an issue for you, or have you always been able to like focus and move on?
All right, so this is a cool question, because I have like a weird answer on this, because all growing up, I was in all these like gifted kid programs and blah, blah, blah. When they used to do a lot of different tests on us and a lot of brain tests. I always came out 50-50. So I love being in that creative space.
Yeah.
And I also can think very logically and methodically. And for me, having that harmony is an oscillation back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So sometimes when I get the creative itch, it's like, I know, because people are like, oh, that's such a great idea. I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm full of them. Literally full of them. Like, there's not enough time to do anything about them. So what I tended to do was, these are so good. My cat might be jumping up here. He always likes to say hello.
It's a star.
That's Tony, everyone. And so what happened was, I started taking like a notebook and writing out all these great ideas. Because if you do, whether it's a brain dump or if you just, whenever you have a great idea, listing it out. Because then I put whatever I was working on, either on a Post-it note or something that could be paper clipped to what I was actually doing. And then I would constantly be reprioritizing what it is that makes the most sense. So there's only enough time to work on a certain amount of things. You can't do them all. And I found that if I put them down, I could get them out of my brain, put it down for a day could that be something that makes sense later on?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are a lot of ideas. There are a lot of things that you can fulfill. And if you're distracted by constantly starting things up and then not finishing them, you don't have that sense of accomplishment if you're one of those people that needs that sense of accomplishment, completion, or, just getting somewhere.
Right.
So I suggest if that might work for somebody, have at that, because that helped me out a lot. And also moving back and forth, creating this space for yourself to do that oscillation. Because sometimes if I have something I really need to focus on and it's going to take my logical side of my brain, and I'm like, whoa, I'm like way heavy on this side. I get crazy in I need to do something creative. And what I found was I'll distract myself and procrastinate because I feel like, oh, but I need to do something creative, so I need to start something new.
Right.
And what I would do is I will take a day or however many hours that I was working on this thing, and certain spaces in between, go and have something stationed in the other room that I can take 15 minutes and whatever it is. I'm not a painter. I won't be able to paint you anything that's of any value or worth, but I might go and do paints. If that's what I feel like doing, I'll just mess around with whatever. And it just gives me some creative energy to not think, do the thing, and then time myself 15, 20 minutes. Then I come back. Now I have a fresh brain for the logical side that was getting antsy and feeling like ants crawling under my skin and wanting to scream and take my computer and throw it out the window, maybe.
I have felt that before, my friend.
Like that, right? It's just me.
I love the idea of timers, though. I use them often for that because I find it very helpful to go back and forth between things, even if it's something like if I'm working in my house, even going like spending part of my time cleaning and part of my time organizing, it serves, or doing something like decorating or something like that. It helps me to go back and forth and not feel, because I also don't like to be told what to do, even if it's from me. I don't like me to say, Jessica, you've got to clean something. So I'm like, oh, no, you don't. We're not doing this. And so I like to be able to feel that control, because then we're going back to always being right and always being controlled.
Right. And the timer keeps you from being sucked in and distracted. So it serves its purpose. And that's, oh, okay, time to go back to the other thing and get it done.
Yeah. I know about the distracted, and I am the queen of the rabbit holes. I have a bed at the bottom of the rabbit hole to house me there when I dive in. It's what I do.
Right?
I love it. I love it. I want to talk a little bit about, I know you talk about self-sabotage, and we've been talking a little bit about some of these different self-sabotage things. Is there anything that's been coming to mind lately? I felt like I wanted to ask that question. Like, is there something self-sabotage that keeps coming up for people in recent times here?
Ooh. A lot of feeling of overwhelm is what I see a lot of. All this gloom and doom about recession BS. You're not going to be able to control it, right? So what can you do for yourself? Not live in the fear. Just keep doing what you're doing and prepare yourself in whatever way that means by making the right decisions for you. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, that scarcity mode that comes into play when people are gloom and doom about recession, and it turns into not enough money, not enough time to do this, not enough provisions, not enough resources, not enough space, all this stuff just keeps on rippling out. Scarcity mode takes over everything. Your beliefs ripple out into every single area of your life. You may feel it or be aware of it in one, but if you feel it and are aware of it in one area, guess what it's doing? It is wreaking its havoc in other areas. You just don't see it because it's kind of like if you have neck pain and it's overpowering, you're not feeling the pain in your lower back until that's gone or diminishes.
Yeah,
It's
it's so true.
That's where the whole always something comes from.
Yeah. Yeah, I know lots of people that say that. I'm gonna smooth over that comment really quickly. I'm glad you. Nobody else is in the room with me. Don't worry. No, I am so glad you talked about the recession because I know that you have a money beliefs challenge coming up, and what good timing for that, because that seems to be all anybody wants to talk about is the recession and how it's all horrible and everything else. So it's a good time to check our money beliefs. Tell us a little bit about it.
Ooh, yeah. 5 days really goes into discovering what your negative beliefs are around money and how to figure out what they are too. Your personality, we cover on one of the days, and then really honing in on all the steps to erase the negative belief that you have, instill a new empowering belief. And I tell you a lot of my stories along the way because what I find is that sharing those stories, people are like, oh my God, I have the same one. Oh my God, this happens to me. And some of the things that you don't realize, and they give you some really cool ways in which when I was going through stuff and I asked, God, my guides, the universe, however you want to put it, was, what do I do? And the stuff that I heard and started to do and implement, it was so simple and so easy to shift into such an abundant way of living that people, I call it picking up the pennies, right? And I've got a story about that and like what that actually means. And people are like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe what happened. And, we're talking about all kinds of things, like $5,000 checks. I didn't have to work for it, didn't have to do anything but answer a phone call, and was like, how did that even happen? Because I don't remember applying for that. So, okay.
Yay. But it's true though, because you were talking about that before, like of times that you would push things away. And I've noticed people will do that, myself included, sometimes where somebody will offer you, and it may not even be just money, it may be time. They'll offer you time, they'll offer you help on something. So it saves you time and money. And we're like, no, no, thanks. Why do we do that?
Even like a coffee, it's something so ridiculous. It seems like it, but if you are going to go hang out with a friend and you're like, hey, I'm going to pick up a coffee. You want me to pick something up for you? And they say, yeah, pick me up a coffee too. So you get there and you give them the coffee and they want to pay you for the coffee. And you're like, no, it's on me. Well, that's fine. And that's fine. But the next time when they buy you a coffee in return and you're like, oh no, you have to take it. Double standard there. And you're just rejecting it twice over, because allow the ebb and flow, because also acknowledge and honor the friend who wants to honor and acknowledge you.
Yes.
Be a friend, have a friend.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. That's so good, because we don't, I think so many of us, we want to honor the people that we love and that are trying to do things with us. But every time we say, no, don't, you can't, or whatever it is, I have this whole story. My grandmother and my aunt used to go to bingo all the time. They used to love to go to the casino. They would do bingo. They would do the slots, whatever. And something happened. I don't remember, my aunt or something had run out of cash or whatever. My grandmother had lent it to her at the casino. So she comes over later on in the week to pay my grandmother back and my grandmother was like, no. And my aunt proceeded to shove it in her bra, Nicole, in the kitchen. They were like
fighting over it
with the shoving of the money. And I was like, you see why I'm messed up with money? Because this is the stuff that I witnessed.
Right. And the thing is too, is you can oscillate between these two totally different personalities, because if mom was one way and dad was another way, so let's say mom was a huge saver. And it was always, well, there's never enough, right? Because we have to save, save, save. The saver on an extreme side is it's never enough, and they're always scrimping and saving, and they'll even compromise their own health to save money sometimes. So it doesn't matter how much they pile up in the bank, it's still never enough. And I used to see this as a financial advisor where, we'd have conversations with people sometimes saying, you have plenty of money. You have more than enough money to carry you through retirement, beyond, and leave a legacy. So why don't you go spend some and go live a little? Yeah. Oh, no, I can't. There's not enough. Well, and that's where the whole you can't take it with you comes from. Yeah. But at the same time, it's okay, maybe the saver. That saver gets their, charge from a great discount, a sale item, clearance rack, coupons, all that. When they save, they get their endorphin release. Yeah. Now, let's say on the spender side, I love to have experiences with friends. I'm not talking like I call it the peacocker, where it's like all the big status symbol, not that person, somebody completely different, where it's the spender. I'm generous with my money. I want to have experiences. So maybe I want to take people out to dinner or an event or something like that. So I want to spend the money on that and the people that I love and just experiencing things. So if you go back and forth between those two things, I see a lot of that. And a lot of times when I talk with my clients, it's, well, tell me about your parents and their relationship with money. Oh my gosh, I was told that we couldn't afford an ice cream cone, and yet a week later we're putting $10,000 down cash on a car. Didn't make any sense to me. I thought I was unworthy. So the child in that sense assigned a meaning. They're not worthy because they couldn't even get an ice cream cone. Meanwhile, the parents have been saving to go purchase a car that they needed. Yeah. Yet we forget that a child can't process things like an adult and can't see the totality of a situation. So as young children between the ages of 0 and 7 is when we're absorbing like a sponge and being programmed like crazy with these assigned meanings.
Right. God, in the last 5 minutes, you've just made all the sense. First of all, you described me and my husband. I am so the experienced person. I want to go experience all the things, and my husband gets a whole thrill if he can save a little bit of money. I remember we have a whole joke about when we went on one of our first dates, and he asked the cashier if they had any coupons we could use, and I'm like, oh my God, please, you did not just do that.
Okay, so can I make a suggestion on how you can actually start to make that work? I know that we only have a few minutes left, but something really cool that you could do is, let's say you're planning for a vacation, right? You could spark that saver person in. This is where we want to go, right? You have your conversation on this is where we want to go. Babe, can you look into it and see, because they love to research and find the best deal and all that stuff. Great, have at it. I'm that person that, the experiencer too, where I want what I want when I want it. So I don't mind paying a little extra right now versus, wait to see if it goes on sale tomorrow. Don't care. I don't care. So it's more like, okay, but I can oscillate between, and I can be aware of certain things, and this is what I need to do for saving this. So if you come together and work together, this is where we want to go. Can you do the research? Yeah. He does the research, finds all the deals, finds all that stuff. So now you're doing all the things that you like and experiencing, and both of you get to enjoy that entire process. So that's kind of it in a very condensed form, but
I love that though. And it's so true, because I say to him all the time, I hate window shopping. Like if I go somewhere, like I go and I want to have the money for it. If I don't, I don't even want to see it. Nope. La la la. Like it's, and he's like, we have to go home. We have to research it. I'm like, why did you bring me here then? It's lovely. We should have a sitcom. I'm trying to tell you. So you've got I put the link down in the comments for everybody. You've got the 5-day money beliefs challenge coming up in September, September 22nd through 26th, 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Yes, we're still on daylight time until October, everybody. Okay.
Yes.
Or November, beginning of November. Since we last talked, you also were part of a film that should be coming out soon. I wanted you to have a moment and tell everybody, because we need more happiness, and it's about happiness.
Yes, it is. So back in March, I was flown out to Salt Lake City, Utah to film with Jeff Hayes Films. They were doing some interviews for a documentary called Hacking Happiness. And I will be in that. It's supposed to be released in October. So I don't have the dates on that just yet, but as soon as I find out, it will be released.
Very exciting. Very exciting. Yeah. I've got the link in the description of this video, as well as scrolling down the bottom there as well. That's just, you can learn a little bit more about Nicole and stuff there. I want to finish the show, Nicole. I always ask everybody that comes on. A lot of times we have people watching the show who are like, look, I like this idea of doing business the way I want to do it, but I've got my mom in this year and my best friend in this year, and they say I can't do this or I can't do that. What do you say to the person who feels like they can't do business their way?
Take a nice deep breath and tell yourself, this is my life. I get to choose every single thing that I do. Everybody else has their own life and they're entitled to make their decisions. So many times people project their beliefs out onto everybody else, and you have your own set of beliefs. So what is it that you believe in? And hopefully it's believing in yourself.
I love that. Believe in yourself. You heard it here first. If you haven't heard it yet today, you heard it now. And we love that for sure. Nicole, thank you so much for being here with me tonight. I was so looking forward to this, and I'm going to go back and have to take a whole bunch of notes because that was so good. So good.
Awesome.
So good.
Great being here. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you all for listening. Love you all.
Absolutely. I want to give you guys a couple of reminders before Nicole and I take off. We have Project Joy live tomorrow morning at the new time. Don't forget, you guys, 9 a.m. Eastern time. And then tomorrow night, we are celebrating the 1-year anniversary of Divine DNA with the Jacksons. So excited. They had it's actually today's the official anniversary. They had the premiere of their show. So really excited to celebrate with them. That is at 7 p.m. Eastern time, of course, only here on the Breakthrough Show Network. Nicole, thank you so much again for being here with me this evening. And I would love to chat anytime. You're so much fun.
You got it.
Absolutely. All right, you guys, we're going to see you next time. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and remind you to do things your way. And we'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye, everybody.